Tech and markets are moving fast. I'm here to keep you ahead of it. This is Deirdre Bosa Live, where Wall Street meets Silicon Valley in real time. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Deirdre Bosa Live, where the hype meets the P&L, where Kalshi just dropped an AI-generated ad into the NBA Finals, where Databricks says boring AI is the real opportunity, and the talent driving this revolution, well, it's running on fumes. We'll explain. We've got Kalshi's head of growth on how they pulled off that ad in just 72 hours. We've got Luma's CEO on what comes next for text to video, and later Databricks CEO Ali Ghodsi on the unsustainable pace inside of the mega caps, followed by Jeff Richards of Notable Capital on how VCs and how the markets are all tracking this shift. So let's get into it. During Game 3 of the NBA Finals, this happened.
Indiana gonna win, baby!
We're in Florida asking people what they put their money on! I'm all in on OKC!
Indiana got that dog in them!
Okay, that was just a snippet. It's about 30 seconds. But the point here, no soundstage, no film crew, just prompts, Google's Gemini, and a major ad slot. Now, it comes from Kalshi, a predictions platform startup, and it is one of the highest profile examples of fully AI-generated video hitting the mainstream. In fact, Kalshi says that it was made end-to-end from idea to live in less than 72 hours. And guess how much it cost them? Less than $2,000 to make. So far, 10 million impressions. Now, this could be the start of something big because this wasn't a stunt. It was distribution, real reach, a signal that generative video has crossed a threshold. Now, Google's VO3, it's already been going viral on social media over the last few weeks. You might have heard of or seen some of them. Some of my favorites, Moses live streaming the Exodus. There's also a whole genre of stormtrooper vlogs. For example, one of them on a galactic safari. But this one here, this one from Kalshi, it's an ad, so it's different. It's an AI-made media showing up in ad breaks on streaming services. And that is potentially extremely disruptive for an industry that is racing towards $1 trillion in global spend, built on human-led production and high-cost creative workflows. Now, consider some of the other news going on in the space right now. Meta, last week, says it will fully automate ad creation by 2026. Agencies, they are already under pressure, and now entire spots are being AI generated. Meanwhile, legacy media companies, they're caught between monetizing AI and suing it. Because here's the irony here. That Kalshi ad was approved by Disney, but Disney is also suing Midjourney, an AI image generator startup, for copyright. So on one hand, the company is profiting from an AI-generated commercial, but on the other, it's suing an AI company for generating content with its IP. This is a contradiction. It is not the last time it's going to show up, because it's also a preview of what is coming. The business models, they're changing faster than the rules. And as always, there are investor implications. That's why we're here. This isn't just a creative disruption. This is technical too and has implications for the AI trade at large. Consider this, as text to video is entering the mainstream imagination through social media, through actual ad spots. This is a signal that the frontier is moving, and it's moving fast. Generating 1080 pixel resolution, coherent 5 to 15 second video from a text prompt in seconds, or a full 30-second broadcast quality commercial, that is high efficiency inference at scale. It's something that Lisa Su is talking about today at AMD. Now, for years, the bottleneck in generative video, it wasn't just model performance, it was compute cost of inference. You've heard this before. It costs a lot more money to run these prompts. The difference is it cost a lot more money a few years ago, and that cost is coming down. And if Google is putting VO in the hands of creators and we're getting actual AI ad spots, this is a signal that high intensity AI inference, it's getting cheap and fast enough to scale. And that in turn is bullish for the AI trade, especially for the chip makers, the cloud giants, the infrastructure plays that are powering the next wave. In other words, the more disruptive generative AI becomes to traditional industries, the stronger the case for the infrastructure powering it. Joining me now is Keaton Inglis, head of growth marketing at Kalshi, and the person behind the ad you just watched. Keaton, welcome to DB Live. Thank you for taking the time.
Hi, Dee. Thanks for having me.
So let's start really basic. What made you decide to try a fully AI generated commercial? How did you guys pull this off in just 72 hours?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we wanted to be really creative and we wanted to execute on it really fast. production companies were 100x the cost of the traditional AI. So we decided to go another route. And yeah, we're really happy with it. I think it did a great job of encompassing everything that Kalshi is from a wide range of markets. You saw the eggs on there, the hurricanes, and then NBA playoffs. So yeah,
The
we're
aliens.
really happy with how it turned out.
But where did the idea come from? I mean, was it because you had this like new incredible tool from Gemini VO3? Is that what made this possible now versus, months ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we look at AI as just opening the doors to creativity, and we found an AI editor that really fit with us and was able to work. So yeah, we just sprinted on it.
Where did you get the idea to sort of make this kind of chaotic? Another word I've heard is chaotic, as well as just sort of like it's an interesting one, and you can't even tell that it's AI, right? Was there any worries about using this to look real when it's actually AI generated? Were there any concerns from the Disney side?
Yeah, so we really just wanted to make an ad that we were proud of, and found places to run it in the first place. We're really social first, and then obviously started with the streaming globally. Based on the feedback, we're going to scale up the distribution. So we just wanted to make something we were proud of and find areas that would accept it.
Do you think you'll do this again? I was having a conversation on CNBC earlier today with one of the anchors saying that you kind of had to be first with this because the sort of the factor of this being so new is exciting. Do you think that you could pull this off again? Will you try?
Yeah, we'll do it again.
You will do it again.
I think there's just unlimited possibilities, right? So we'll for sure do it again.
What's the response been like? Have you had other startups, other companies reach out and say, "How did you do this? We're interested."
Yeah,
And even the person you used to do it.
yeah, it's been overwhelmingly positive. Tons of companies have messaged us saying we wish we did this first. So yeah, we're really proud of it and happy how it turned out.
Have you heard from any ad agencies sort of on the other side saying, maybe you shouldn't be doing this?
We haven't. We were in discussions with a few that quoted us, 100 to 200x the price of what this was going to be. So I'm sure they'll be in our inbox soon.
Okay, you let us know. So I've also been really fascinated by VO3. I've particularly been watching some of the social media content. You have these, accounts going from zero to what, like a million or more within just days, using VO3 to just completely create viral clips. How familiar are you with it? Because even when I tried to look around, you actually really do need a human in the back end with really, really specific prompts. So, what was that process like finding the right person who was able to make this a reality?
Yeah, we found an incredible editor. His name is PJ Ace to do this for us. I think without him, there's no shot we would have been able to do this. I can tell you on the 30-second video that we had, it was hundreds and hundreds of very specific, dozens of paragraph long prompts. It wasn't just, type and play.
Right.
So yeah, without him, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Right. So it's not like anyone can just sort of open up their computer and do this. You do need creativity. You need something on the back end. So when you think about, and what I was just sort of talking about is disrupting this massive ad industry that's been around for a very, very long time. Do you think that when does that happen?
Yeah, I always believe creativity is a moat, and there's no difference here with AI. I think it's all about creativity, finding a way to execute on it, and we did that, so we're super proud of it.
Right. And Kalshi, I think of it, you guys are a predictions platform and you guys are a little more feisty, a little more provocative in your marketing campaigns. There was one in Times Square, I believe, last year. That's your purview, right? How do you think about how you guys deliver yourselves, especially as you try to gain new users and gain a lot of them?
Yeah, we like being different. I think we embrace it, and we're not afraid to do big stunts like this. During the election, we had a ton of them. We had the New York billboards. We had Teslas wrapped in odds. We had a drone show. So we're leaned into being different and not being afraid of the spotlight. And yeah, it's been great so far.
Okay, so what's next? You got an NBA Finals game, although viewership way down this year. Do you go bigger?
Yeah, we probably will. I can't talk a ton about it, but we're excited. So
See you in the Super Bowl next year?
I can't say anything, but I'm not gonna say no.
Okay, got it. Keaton, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you for having me, Dee.
Well, Kalshi's spot, it might have been, one of the first of the highest profile AI ads, especially in, a sports final, lots of viewership there, but there is a whole wave coming behind it and a new crop of startups pushing generative video even further. One of the most talked about is Luma AI. Their product Dream Machine, it's turning heads online, raising eyebrows in Hollywood as well. Joining me now is Luma's co-founder and CEO, Amit Jain. And then thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you heard that conversation. It feels like the space is just moving so quickly. What does the rise of AI videos say about where the frontier of AI is moving?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. Video is becoming the medium of information on the internet.
Mute button, I think.
And
We got it.
I'm sorry.
Here we
Can
go.
you hear me?
We got you.
All right. Thanks for having me. So video has become the medium of information on the internet. Before we used to mostly read things online, but now, especially the younger you skew, people are spending most of their time watching video for entertainment, for learning, for work, for getting their news. And it is the highest input medium to the brain. And AI video, these are the systems that we need to actually serve this insatiable demand. So if you think about it, every person on the planet, 8 billion people watching even 1 hour of generated video a day, we have to build those systems. And I think this is where generative video and generative AI is done.
I mean, you guys have been doing this for a while, but it feels like we've just really had a moment. I liken sort of the VO3 moment to OpenAI Studio Ghibli moment, right? When it just really entered the mainstream and went viral. So what does this mean for you guys that have been here? And how does Luma differ from a VO3?
Absolutely. So we have been working with some of the most legendary companies in the world on how they will incorporate this into their workflows for a very long time. But yeah, I think last year, companies, including ours, spent time to build the infrastructure that is necessary to train these multimodal models. These models are substantially different from LLMs which power ChatGPT. Now we are seeing the gains come from it. So our previous model, RAID 2, was the first cinematic model to show this level of quality. And things that people created with it went insanely viral to hundreds of millions of impressions. And I think Google's recent model is starting to show some of that performance as well. And I think because it generates audio, it has captured people's imagination. And that's fantastic for the industry. Because basically, what it is teaching people is that AI is not just for generating text or generating code, but in fact, we can build sophisticated systems that understand and generate all these really creative outputs and things that can engage and captivate imagination. What it has meant for us. So,
go ahead. Finish your thought.
So what it has meant for us is that, previous year, in 2024, most people were trying and experimenting with these technologies, but now we cannot actually service the demand that is coming our way. And the amount of input that we are getting has been just through the roof.
And I touched on this earlier, but part of that is cost, right? A few years ago, 1 year ago, it would cost a lot more in terms of compute credits to do this. And even earlier this year, there's in the public markets, the AI trade struggling a little bit, names like NVIDIA, CoreWeave, AMD, especially the chip stocks, right? There was all this question on, is this going to plateau? But when it becomes more efficient, but how has that changed the picture too? I mean, when costs come down, do you see demand just go higher?
Absolutely. Demand for video currently looks like a bottomless pit. There's not enough video that can be generated that people won't watch. And if we think about the current state at this moment in time, we are extremely inference bound. There is not enough GPUs to actually serve, the demand from advertising, the demand from content creators, but the demand from also large enterprises. So particularly for Luma, we have partnered with some of the best in the industry, people who are responsible for scaling compute. This includes the Humane partnership that we announced this past month. This also includes our partnership with Amazon and AMD. So we are building systems that can scale video inference very efficiently. But still, as we stand today, there is not enough compute capacity in the world to actually service it.
Who are you building for?
Yeah. So we are working with some of the largest enterprises in the world who, produce most of the things that you and I watch every single day. That includes studios, from Hollywood and across the world. That also includes very large CPG companies. I mean, every company, if you think about it, produces and or at least invest a large amount of time and money in telling their story and producing a large amount of media, whether that is through advertising, social media, or whatever have you. So what we do is we collaborate with them very closely, help them learn how they can actually completely change how they think about media, how they think about talking to the world. We build the systems and tools with them in collaboration with them, bring our models and help them actually, pull the future forward, basically, in what they're able to do. What you're seeing here is our latest creation. It's this new model that allows actors, directors to, act scenes out in their garage, and it transforms them into these super cinematic and beautiful scenes that look right out of a high budget movie. So this has been a huge driver for demand and engagement with Hollywood, but also across advertising and various agencies, advertising agencies, media agencies around the world.
Right. But there's a push and pull. This is disruptive, right? We talked about this a little bit earlier, and Hollywood has this complicated relationship with AI, and that, yes, it will bring costs down, but it can also displace jobs. How do you balance that?
Yeah. So the first thing, the hard truth about this is that Hollywood has to change. There's actually really no two ways about it. When you think about the level of efficiency and the level of creativity that AI brings to the table, especially for movie making, producing television series, these kind of media, you have to just follow the money. So, the Kalshi example that you gave, $2,000 to produce an ad that looks absolutely phenomenal. This is a major disruption. And what we are seeing now, especially from some of our most innovative partners, that they realize that this is a ground up change that they have to adopt or risk significant disruption. But on the question of job change, actually, what we are seeing is that this is still essentially a very human endeavor. Humans are the ones who are telling that story, right? Like understanding what to talk about, understanding what the story should be, how to engage people. So actually, let me tell you the biggest problem we are seeing in adoption of generative AI for video. It's the lack of people and artists who know how to use generative AI. So we are doing a large effort with some of our partners as well as independently to train and teach people how to use our models, how to use these tools, so they can actually then go and work with studios, work with companies, and get jobs which are actually currently very high paying.
They might be
pay like
worried
software
though
engineers.
that they embrace it and then it replaces them. I mean, when you say you're working with Hollywood studios, are you able to name any of them, or do they not want to be named because that could put them in conflict with the actors and all the different groups of people that they employ?
I think some of them are actually talking very publicly about this, but we respect the privacy of our customers, and they should come out and talk about how they are utilizing these technologies. We are the company that is building the systems that will help them. So we don't actually talk about publicly who we are working with. But on the job loss and the replacement side of things, I think we are very far away from AI that is able to tell engaging stories that humans are able to do. I mean, if you talk to directors, we work with a lot of directors of shows that you and I love to watch, and their problem isn't that these things are replacing their jobs. Their problem is they have way too many ideas that just cannot be greenlit, cannot be produced. If you look across animation, we work with Japanese studios quite a lot. They have a 5-year lag. There are scripts that are greenlit, shows that are greenlit that cannot be produced today. So right now, this market is extremely supply constrained, and there's just not enough people who can even service the demand.
Right.
So I think the ideas of job loss is entirely unfounded currently.
And maybe in the longer term, but in the shorter term, you don't think job loss is a valid concern?
I think every technology changes things, and this will be no different, to be honest with you. But storytelling is not going anywhere. And if you look at the demand for video, so if it was just such a case that by doing this, we just address all the demand and we are done. Well, that was fine. But demand for video keeps rising. People keep watching more and more and more video. I think the long term of this looks like actually there will be way more creators, way more people making content, way more people able to tell their stories. So I think actually this industry is going to be a job creator.
Yeah, that's what we hear a lot, from AI CEOs working on different things is get skilled up. The better way to not be
Yeah.
left behind. We'll see how it all shakes out. Finally, just last question for you, Meet. Does any of this keep you up at night? I mean, the videos are so realistic. I got fooled. Did you see the kangaroo waiting to board the airplane? That one?
Yes, that was adorable.
I mean,
Um,
I was so confused. I said, I think I know this is AI, but it looks so real. I mean, that is harmless. It was adorable. You're right. But does
yeah.
any of this keep you up at night when we get into the idea of deep fakes, which is, what a lot of lawmakers and policymakers and mainstream Americans are worried about?
Absolutely. I think, I think about it quite a bit. I think about it from both societal as well as systematic perspectives. What are the things from technology side that we can do to make sure people know what is AI generated versus something that has been captured by a camera and can serve as a public record. So we are doing quite a bit of work in that area with some other partners in the industry as well to figure out how this is nascent days, and for the first time now, in the past 5-6 months, is when this level has been crossed where people can even be confused by AI video. But I think we have to do the work to figure out how do we actually communicate to people that look, this was something that was generated by a person sitting on their computer versus it being a function of record. There are technologies like digital signatures, but they're not perfect today, and they can be easily fooled, they can easily be removed, and most importantly, they're very difficult for regular people to assess, that this has been generated with AI. So I think there's technical work necessary in this area that we are doing, that some other responsible partners in the industry are working on. In terms of lawmakers and as a society, I think this is basically the same change that happened when we got the internet, and anybody could write a blog post on the internet. So if you saw something on the internet, it didn't mean that was truth. I think this is now happening with video. Video and images have been a source of record for a long time, but the moment computers are able to generate them and the moment they will become convincing as a society, we also have to now find trusted sources. So when something or piece of news, information, text, video, whatever is coming from that trusted source, we know that we can actually rely on it. But when it's coming from in the wild, just like with text, I don't think we have to evolve our thinking and what we think is trustable.
Well said, balanced. Amit, it was wonderful to talk to you. I learned a lot. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dee.
All right, let's shift from viral video to something that's just as revealing, the AI workforce itself, because this week we are seeing more signs of internal realignment across tech's biggest players, across startups. Google, though, we'll start with them, offering buyouts and not in peripheral units, but in search and ads. That's its core moneymaker still. Meta, it's elevating superintelligence to the C-suite, and across the board this year, we've just seen strategic exits, reorgs, high-stakes hires designed to rewire these companies from the inside out, all around AI. It's not like those massive layoff announcements we got post-pandemic, but this is kind of like a quiet reorganization that happens, feels like on a weekly basis. Now, the memo that Google sent to employees makes it really explicit. Basically, the exec said that if you're not aligned with this new strategy, this is your exit ramp. It is a shift in how entire businesses operate. Now, one company that's been right at the center of this AI realignment and leading really this wave of AI, it is a darling in Silicon Valley. It's Databricks, one of the most well-funded, well-positioned in enterprise AI right now. Its CEO, Ali Ghodsi, he's competing head-to-head with the likes of Google, Meta, OpenAI, not just on product, but on talent. And I spoke with him this week on CNBC. After we wrapped the on-air interview, we kept rolling. And what he said next went even deeper. He talked about how AI teams inside the mega caps, they're operating in a pressure chamber. Why top researchers are walking away from the chaos, and how Databricks is pitching something different, real world problems, sustainable pace, and a long-term vision of AI that's not just chasing AGI hype. Now, he also weighed in on one of the most talked about debates in AI right now. Is reasoning overhyped, or are we still just scratching the surface of what current models can do in the real world? Here's that extended conversation. let's jump right into it. So we just talked a little bit on air about sort of the talent wars that we're seeing, and what is like the Databricks specific advantage being AI native when you hear things from the likes of, at Google and Meta that they're not shipping fast enough, that maybe they're too clunky, they're not as nimble. So what do you kind of sell when you're trying to go out and hire people?
Look, I think it's a tough market, and all of these tech companies, there's a pressure chamber on the AI teams. There's like deadlines. You got to ship, and it's like a race. They're working 7 days a week, around the clock, and it's just, people are stressed out. So that's why a lot of the exodus you see from the different companies is just too much pressure. They just want good leadership that just trusts them, let them, work on problems that are interesting. One of the big advantages we have is that we have all these customers that have the data with us. So what we tell them is that you can come here and you can work and interact with the customers and you can iterate with them, so that you're not, many steps removed, and we can solve problems that actually matter. Right. We're not just building, artificial general intelligence. We're doing it for enterprises, for problems that matter. And that really resonates with people. But I actually think more than anything, they want to have, can we have a not stressful environment where there's this constant pressure of how are you doing on the benchmarks, how's it going? That's stressing people out,
It's really stressing people out, even at the mega caps that move.
Absolutely.
You hear about them moving more slowly?
I mean, I'm telling
Is
you.
Is it not like that anymore?
Yeah, I would just say that, there's like, those companies are big, they have a lot of engineers, but the research teams and the people doing large language models, it's a complete pressure cooker,
Are you saying that there should be work-life balance a little bit?
I mean, I actually think it's not sustainable to have them work at that pace that they're doing. I mean, they'll tell you, like when you talk to them, they say, I've been working this hard, I can't do this much longer. Like I can do that maybe for a half a year more or a year more, but eventually I'll have to tap out.
It feels like a lot of folks wear that as a badge of honor though. Like we're working weekends, nights, everything, and that's what's expected. But you're saying that no, to be sustainable, you need...
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of working hard. I myself, people say I'm a workaholic, but I really think it has to be sustainable. You have to be able to do it for 10 years. Are you working at a pace that's going to sustain for 10 years? Because this AI race is not over in 6 months or in a year. So is that how you want? And if you burn yourself out, there's no recovery from it, or it takes a long time.
I got to ask you about salaries in the space, because I know that they've been going up and up in the AI era, but with this, Mark Zuckerberg at Meta reportedly on, this personal tour to recruit people. Are they higher than they've ever been? Are they climbing quickly? I think I saw reported like $10 million for 1 year. Is that what the going senior AI engineer is worth right now?
No, for really, really big names, it's significantly higher than that.
Or Alexander Wang, maybe billions?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Alex is getting, and I don't know if he needs more, but for sure, much, much higher than 10 million is very common for really senior researchers. But I would say it's coming down actually. I would say it was a year ago when Noam was hired from Character into Google. I think he got paid $1 billion or $2 billion. Like he personally got $1 billion is rumored. I think it's coming down actually from those levels.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I do think it's actually a little bit better, but it's still a talent war out there, and it's still crazy.
Right. I want to talk to you a little bit about reasoning, because this, for a long time now, has been the next big thing in AI. But there was Apple's paper earlier this week. There was a similar paper from Anthropic, from a Chinese research lab, suggesting that reasoning may be hitting limits, that it breaks down when you get into really, really complex questions. How much of it holds up in real world use cases and not just benchmark tests? I guess I'm asking for your view on whether reasoning is overhyped or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the right question to ask. How well does it do not just on benchmarks? Because we can make it do really well on benchmarks. We can make it do really well on specific tasks. And that's valuable. We have a lot of agents who want to do specific tasks at companies, and that's what Databricks does. We make those agents, we use reinforcement learning and reasoning to make it good at that task. I think the thing that's not well understood, and that's some of those papers you allude to show, is that it doesn't generalize. So yeah, while it might be really good at this task, it's awful at very common sense things that you and I would do in our sleep. And that's, I think, a fundamental limitation of the reasoning models right now. That was not true in the previous paradigm. And by previous paradigm, I mean 2 whole years ago, when we were doing pre-training. The new model would just be better at everything. People would call it zero-shotting, few-shotting. They meant that, in one go, it would get things right and generalize to new things. These reasoning models are not as good at that. You have to really train them, and you have to train them something where you really can evaluate, something where you can vary, like it's dead easy, like math. I know there's a right answer. Are you going to get it right or not? We can train them to be good at that. But if it's common sense reasoning and so on, they're not that good.
But even the logical puzzles, which are supposed to be benchmarks, right? You have like the checkers jump and the Hanoi Bridge. they actually just completely break down when you
Yeah.
get more complicated. Those are benchmarks, aren't they?
Yeah, but we can build very easily, if we want to, a reasoning model that crushes it and does really well on Towers of Hanoi, if we wanted to. This is like you've taken another reasoning model that's trained on something else, it's not necessarily going to do well on Towers of Hanoi. But then we know how to build one that's really good at Towers of Hanoi, but then there's a million problems like that, and this is the problem. If it doesn't generalize, you have to train them again and again and again. So I think we're going into an era where we're going to see much more diversity of AI models. That, okay, this one is good at Towers of Hanoi, or, you know, onboarding HR task, but it's not good at offboarding HR task, and so on and so forth. So I do think, you know, put it differently, I think the sort of artificial superintelligence is much farther away than we thought.
That's the
you know?
takeaway.
That's the key takeaway.
Yeah.
I think we can still have big impact with AI in, you know, everyday life, but I think that superintelligence, as we were sort of, that, you know, the thing that's all, you know, knowing and can do everything, that's many, many more years out. Probably we need major breakthroughs that we don't have yet to get there.
Right. You are very rational and maybe even throw a little bit of cold water when it comes to these really buzzy terms like agents and reasoning. However, you're also at the forefront of these trends. So I also just want to give you a moment to say where you think we're headed. And I know that you've said before that we have the AI right now, models, to do really big things, right?
Yeah, and I think the reasoning itself, even though it doesn't generalize, we have everything we need. We have all the AI we need to start making our, you know, our workforce much more productive in any task that you give them. We can do reasoning on that particular task and train a model that's much better at that. That's why we announced Agent Bricks today. So with Agent Bricks, we do agent learning. So we steer the agents to get better at those specific tasks. And the key insight is, how do we actually do evaluations and benchmarks? You know, not just on math tasks or, you know, Olympiad contests, but at specific tasks. If you want to do HR onboarding, how do we evaluate if an agent is doing a good job on that particular task or not? That's the problem that we're focused on, that, you know, a lot of others are not focused on it because they're sort of on this, hey, how can we make it to be even better at math, at the very frontier?
The biggest and best, whereas Databricks is actually harnessing data to do these specific things.
Yeah, more mundane, boring AI kind of is what we're focused on.
Okay, I like it. Ali, thanks so much for staying an extra few minutes. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that was Ali Ghodsi, CEO of Databricks, and we appreciate your comments. Keep them rolling in, your questions as well. We are glad that you enjoyed the interview. That was the first time that we aired that part of it. So thank you, S. Bills. Ali Ghodsi, I mean, he just gave us a real-time pulse check on where things actually stand on AI. He is always so candid. He didn't just talk about the benchmark headlines, but the pressure cooker as well behind the scenes, and that was refreshing to hear, because what he's saying is that talent is burning out. Salaries are sky high. Even the biggest tech companies, they're struggling to move fast enough. And while everyone is chasing reasoning and agents and artificial general intelligence, he says the real value is in what he calls boring AI, task-specific, enterprise useful, and actually deployable today. That's where Databricks specializes, and that is why it's worth north of $60 billion, one of the most valuable private companies in the world, right? If you think that data is the gold of the AI era, that's where Databricks sits. Let's bring someone in who's seeing this play out across his portfolio. Jeff Richards, managing partner at Notable Capital. He has backed companies across data infrastructure, SAS, Frontier AI. Jeff, thrilled to have you on.
Great to be on. Congrats on the new show. I'm also intrigued by my background. I look like I'm floating in space.
Oh, there you go. We'll get you a special DD Live screen. Let's talk about what I thought was really interesting, because it was new to me. But Ali was talking about how, you know, executives, scientists, researchers in AI, they need to be sustainable. But I meet a lot of them who wear burnout like a badge of honor, right? Like it's a necessary sacrifice to win. Do you think that's sustainable? And is this becoming a kind of dogma in the AI world? Where do you fall?
Well, you and I have chatted a lot about this, Deirdre. I mean, I would argue, I've been in Silicon Valley since 1995. The dot-com era was a lot of fun. It was very exciting, but of course it crashed. And then we had the cloud mobile era, which was just an incredible acceleration of technology adoption. I think most of us would argue, who are in the center of this, that this is bigger. You know, orders of magnitude, AI is going to have a much bigger impact on our economy and on the world than either of those two did, which is really saying something. And so I think what you see is this, you know, not only in the entrepreneurial world, but the executive teams, the teams inside of these companies, they want to win. It's such an exciting prize. If you look at the value of Microsoft today, Google today, Amazon today, we're going to have generational companies like that built in this era. I would argue, we are a shareholder in Databricks after they acquired Neon, which is one of our portfolio companies. And so I would argue Databricks has the opportunity to be one of those companies, and Ali's one of the generational CEOs that a lot of us look up to. So people are running hard. It's an opportunity to take advantage of a window in time. It's probably, as he said earlier, it's not a 6-month race. This is a 5 to 10-year race. But a lot of the precedents, a lot of the innovation, a lot of the creativity, a lot of the distribution is happening right now and probably going to happen 25, 26, 27. So I don't blame people for running hard. We're all running pretty hard at this opportunity. I would argue this is going to be the most exciting summer I've seen in venture capital in the last decade at least. And there's a reason for it. It's just a huge opportunity and it's pretty exciting.
I mean, what's been so exciting about this wave ever since like ChatGPT came out and made it sort of more mainstream is that there's always this question I ask you it all the time through any kind of wave. How do the upstarts compete against these incumbents, right? That have huge distribution, huge amounts of capital, the network that say a Microsoft has, an enterprise. But what's been amazing is that you have seen these, billion-dollar plus startups spread out all the time and really challenge the incumbents on their home turf. I remember speaking to one CEO founder, and I asked him, are you going to go public? He said, I don't have time because going public requires, doing the road shows. It requires getting all the documents together, and we just have to push as hard as possible. Do you think, especially when you have data, right, as the moat, they have data, the incumbents, but what you've seen is the startups actually building very specific pools of data, another thing that Ali Ghodsi talked about. What's going to happen in this next wave, though, especially now that, we're seeing the mega caps move faster than ever?
It's a great question. And I think that when this first wave, when this AI wave really hit 3 years ago, everybody sort of looked at the Mag 7, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons, the Metas, et cetera, and said, well, gosh, they have a huge advantage. They have distribution. They have the money to spend on CapEx. And obviously they're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on CapEx. But if you look at categories, look at Cursor. Copilot came out for Microsoft before Cursor was even in the category. And, I can't speak broadly to the market data, but I will tell you that the majority of our companies are using Cursor. So there are certain things, it's the classic innovator's dilemma. Microsoft wants to launch Copilot for Microsoft products. But if you're a developer in the market and you're using all kinds of tools and all kinds of products, you want something that cuts across that landscape. And so it's going to be a really interesting scenario where traditionally in enterprise software, distribution is a massive advantage, right? You look at Salesforce, you look at Adobe, you look at all these companies that have this distribution advantage, these huge go-to-market teams that have relationships with customers, et cetera.
Right? The bundle.
And the bundle. Yeah, of course. So, we can go back to the Slack and Teams example, right? Slack innovated in the market, created the best product in the market, and then Microsoft launched Teams, which I don't think anybody thought was a better product, but kind of came out and sort of overwhelmed the market because they had distribution and they could bundle it with their other products. I just think we're early. It's the second inning. You have a company like OpenAI that came out of nowhere and is now at a $10 billion run rate in 3 years. It took Facebook 10 years to get to a $10 billion run rate. So let's just put this in perspective about A, where we are in sort of the infancy of this market, and B, how exceptional these breakout companies are. You look at Anthropic, OpenAI, you've got companies like Cursor, Scale, which Facebook just acquired, or at least acquired 49% of. These companies didn't even exist 5 years ago. So this is just a really interesting moment in time. And then to your point about IPOs, as you know, this is something I'm very passionate about. If you wind back the clock to 1996, we had 7,000 public companies in America. Today we have 4,000. So I would love to see some kind of a shift in, I don't know if it's going to take, regulatory policy or what it's going to take. But we need something to encourage more companies to go public. And then if you just look at the performance of companies that have gone public in the last 2 or 3 years, it's been exceptional. And today Chime went out and got a great reception.
I was going to say, let's show a chart of Chime today, right? First day of trade. Last time I looked, it was up 45%. Let's see where it is. We're only about 15 minutes from the close of markets. But yeah, and you sent me a chart, which was great. It feels like we had like almost a false start a few years ago. It was a year or two ago, right? But this feels a lot more sustainable. At the same time, Jeff, these are a lot of fintech companies, right? Mm-hmm. It was funny because I asked Ali too. I said, I got to ask this question. He gives me the same answer every single time. I ask him every few months.
He's very good at saying when you're out. Yeah.
And we had this, CNBC had its Disruptors 50 list, right? The most exciting private companies. So we pretty much asked all of them. Myself or my colleagues asked them, what do you think about going public? And it was funny because 2 days ago, you had Palmer Luckey at Anduril say, we're going to go public. And then Ali told me yesterday, yes, we are definitely going to go public. And it was funny to see like what happened online on X. I think I saw this one post that was like the imminent IPOs of Anduril and Databricks is going to rock the markets, but they didn't say when. And I mean,
Right.
I don't think they're planning it imminently. So when are we going to see those? What is going to make them willing to spend the time, go on roadshows, and become public companies? Because you know, Jeff, like that calculus has changed a little bit here. It's no longer the milestone that it once was.
Yeah, and I think what's happened is, really, if you go wind back the clock to Sarbanes-Oxley in the early 2000s, that really changed the dynamic of what it meant to be a public company. It created a lot of regulatory overhead, a lot of cost to be public, and the private market has filled that gap. You have private equity firms, private credit firms, obviously venture capital is probably 10x in size in the last 15 years. So the private markets have created very liquid markets for people to both raise capital, create shareholder liquidity for early investors and employees. So I don't know what puts the genie back in the bottle. I do think going public is a terrific milestone for a company. It creates an enduring company that'll be around for a long time. It's great for employees and obviously gives people in America an opportunity to buy shares in these companies. I'd sort of break it into two buckets. One bucket is the companies that we think of from sort of the prior unicorn era, pre-LLM, if you will, sort of pre-2022, 23, the 1,000 unicorns that raised money. And some of those, Chime is one of those and are now going public. Service Titan went out in December. It's done extremely well as a stock. I think it's up 40 or 50%. So there are a percentage of those companies that are going to go out. They're large in scale. I think Chime mentioned today it's profitable. So some of them are going to be profitable. They're still got good growth. And then you have a second category of companies, which is companies like OpenAI, Perplexity, some of these newer 100% bet on AI bets. And as I was mentioning yesterday to a friend, to me, that's going to be our Netscape Amazon moment. If you wind back the clock, I'm old enough to have been in Silicon Valley in 1995, 96. When those companies went public, it was really a demarcation moment that the internet had arrived. And of course, there were a lot of companies that went public that shouldn't have and died. But those companies have gone on to become, massive parts of our economy. And I'm hopeful that a few of these newer companies that are showing just incredible growth will brave the waters and go public at some point, probably not this year, but maybe in 2026. And I think that'll be pretty exciting.
Kind of a catch-22 though, right? Because those brightest are the brightest, the largest unicorns, the pure AI plays, they can raise money. They can easily raise money in the private markets. When does that shift, especially as distributions to LPs sort of slows as companies stay private for longer?
Well, I think so. You're bringing up a great point, which is in the venture capital industry, we have a little bit of a tale of two cities right now. All of us are working really hard to generate liquidity from prior funds that were deployed in 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, while we're also just incredibly excited about this moment in time, the last 24, 36 months, as well as looking ahead. And so nobody wants to miss this opportunity. This is a generational investment cycle, but we're also out working really hard with those companies that were funded prior to the LLM generation. And in many cases, some of them are pivoting. They're going after trying to take more share in this AI opportunity, whether that's in SMB tech or vertical software. You see it in cybersecurity. There's so many offshoots of AI that we often don't even talk about. Cybersecurity is a great one. Palo Alto Networks, CrowdStrike, those stocks have been unbelievable over the last couple of years. But there's great private companies. Obviously, we saw Google dip into the market and buy Wiz. You've got Orca, you've got Drata, you've got Vanta. You've got a bunch of companies that are not only scaling and doing really well, but also really well positioned for AI.
Right. And by the way, you mentioned pure AI plays like catnip for the market right now. CoreWeave, just look at CoreWeave, right? I mean,
Yeah.
unbelievable parabolic performance. And that's a good place to end it. Maybe a preview of what we could see eventually when some of these pure AI darlings go public.
Fingers crossed.
You'll be watching. Exactly. Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time. Great to get
Thanks,
your insight.
Deirdre. Good to see you.
All right, that does it for DB Live this Thursday. We're going to be off the next 2 weeks because it is a holiday, but we'll see you right back here. Thanks for tuning in. As always, thank you for your comments and questions. See you next time.